If I can get my machine to work. What we're proposing to go through is just a quick introduction and set up, then talk a little bit about the context of managing and optimizing technology within the communications technology area, just to give some background and context to what we're going to talk about, and then look at some of the key challenges, the core components that we see as essential to making the most of how you manage and how you optimize the technology that you're currently running, and then some thoughts that we have on the options available to you and how we think you can get it right from a management and optimization perspective. So, excuse me. As with all these things on sort of webinars, it's quite difficult to do justice to what is a very significant area of technology investment and ownership. And so I always apologize at the front end that this is quite surface level, in terms of the content. But really what we want to try and do is give you some of our thoughts and hopefully our knowledge and expertise that we've gained over the last 20 years working with companies around the management of their technology. And really, if you can come away with just one or two things or thoughts or ideas that will help improve the way you're doing it today, then I would deem this to have been a success. So just in terms of getting things set up and introducing what we're doing, I'm going to talk very quickly about Touchbase. This is not a sales webinar. We obviously want to deal with you all. I mean, that's the realities of commercial life. But this is really about trying to give you some thoughts and tips and best practices on management of technology. And so I'm very briefly going to go over Touchbase, a little bit about why we've chosen to do this topic on this webinar, and then what outcome you should expect from it. So from a Touchbase perspective, we're a global technology services company. We operate predominantly in the US, Europe, and Asia Pacific, and specialize in collaboration and contact center technologies. We've been working with communications technology for about the last 20 years, have a really strong heritage in legacy, what we would term legacy platforms, and obviously have significant capability and depth in modern communication collaboration technologies. We're very focused on the service aspect of designing, implementing, and supporting and managing technologies, and we work predominantly with what we would call mid-sized national and multinational companies who generally employ between 1,000 and 50,000 people worldwide. We've worked with about over 1,000 companies across 60 countries in the last 20 years, and our main focus is really trying to help companies drive tangible business return and value out of exceptional technology solutions and deliver something amazing to their end users. And a core part of that is the way in which companies manage and optimize the technology after the lights have gone on. So after all the work's been done around business requirements, designing the technology, implementing the technology, and making it work and go live, we think there is a big area of technology operations, which is what we're talking about today, that perhaps doesn't get the amount of attention that it should, and that we term management and optimization. The reason people work with us is because we specialize. We're not a generalist. Our real passion and focus is helping companies improve the way in which they communicate by embracing and implementing modern collaboration and contact center technology. We have the capability across multiple territories, and so for organizations which are operating nationally from a US perspective or globally, we can deliver a consistent experience across multiple territories, which of course is very valuable to organizations who have the challenge of working either nationally or globally. And we have proven capability, 20 years working with some of the world's largest companies. So we wanted to cover this topic, which, there's always a lot of talk about technology, and there's always a lot of talk about what it can do and the wonderful features it has and how it's developing. But we believe that there isn't enough focus on how once you've made this massive investment in communications technology, how you should then try and optimize it on an ongoing basis and manage it. And our experience, having dealt with many companies, is that management and optimization, it generally is an afterthought when it comes to the technology investment life cycle. And we believe quite strongly that it should be at the core of the decision-making process. And so, the attention given to defining business requirements and aligning technology functionality and deploying technology in a seamless manner should be on an equivalent level or equivalent importance as how that technology is then going to be managed on a day-to-day basis and how it's going to be optimized as the business develops and the business requirements change. And it is not being overly dramatic to say that this piece of the technology investment lifecycle makes the difference between success and failure. Huge amounts of work can go into the front end of designing and deploying, but if the planning and attention to detail is not placed on the management and optimization, then generally speaking, projects and technology investments can be seen as a failure. So we felt it was important. We hope you think it's important, and hopefully today will give you some excuse me, some things to think about. The outcome you should expect from today is, we hope, and you can only be the judge of that, is just a greater understanding of the importance of management and optimization. Now, in looking at those of you who are attending, and there's a very large number, so we're very grateful for you making the time. It's quite clear that a lot of you are already within the sphere of support or management or optimization of technology in your day-to-day roles, and so you will already understand how important it is. But hopefully today will give you an understanding of how important we think it is and some of the options available to you to manage your technology better. And then just some best practice and tips that should be considered, we think, by all companies, all of which you might look at and say, well, that's obvious, and why have I just spent the last 30 minutes listening to you because you've just told me what I already know, which often is what companies like us do. But it might give you some order and some additional things to include in your planning when you're looking at support and management going forward. And then the last thing is, we just like, because you're giving us your time, we'd like to offer you a follow-up free of charge management and optimize audit if you're in the position where you want to look more closely at it and you think that it could have some value to you. These audits are usually relatively expensive, and because obviously you've made the time to listen to me and Touchbase, we'd like to offer that to you free of charge if you think it's something that would be of use to you. So just some background to bring excuse me, a bit of context to this area of management and optimization. Now, I'm speaking specifically about the area of technology that Touchbase knows well and is very comfortable with, which is communications technology. And that now encompasses voice, video, messaging, instant messaging, presence, conferencing, all of your various contact center technologies. And but pretty much all that I'm going to talk about is applicable to any technology that you're operating within your environment and that you're looking to improve the management and optimization of. The key thing from a communications perspective is that we have moved from a proprietary environment to a sort of multi-vendor, multi-application, much more complex environment from a support perspective. And so if you look 10 years ago, certainly from a Touchbase perspective, the work that we did from a support and management perspective was all around proprietary systems. So the box was supplied by a specific vendor, the cable that connected the box was the same vendor, in the case of voice, the handset was provided by that vendor. You know, everything end-to-end was provided by the same manufacturer, and so the support of that environment was much simpler. You'll have to excuse me, I've woken up with a bit of cough, but was much simpler, and obviously in that environment the accountability was much simpler. Now we've moved from that to a much more disparate environment where it's quite common for voice to be the voice system to be different to the video system, to be different to the IM system, the presence system, the conferencing system, but they are all interdependent. And so if you look at the transport layer, which would be all of your external network and your internal network, the processing layer, which increasingly is housed within data centers on a virtualized basis, and the application layer, which, depending on what your vendor strategy is around the various communications tools, could be one or many vendors. It has moved from quite a simple environment to support and manage to one which is extremely complex. And that is just at the base technology layer. When you start to look at the way in which the device requirements of your users is developing, from this dictatorial, we will give you this end device from a voice perspective, usually a handset, you'll use it in this way, we'll program it in this way, to this completely open, you use what you want to use, and we'll accommodate that by powering your device with the applications necessary to make them work and to allow you to do your job. That it is a major shift. So not only at the base technology layer of transport processing and the application, but the way in which your users are consuming it is changing significantly, which all sort of falls in line with the fact that the portfolio of applications and tools that your users are demanding are becoming broader and more complex. And so again, 10 years ago, you would allow your users to make and receive a telephone call, you'd allow them to do a conference, and maybe some other things. Now you are being asked to provide them with a very broad set of tools which encompass, obviously, call control, but also video capability, either in the boardroom or at the device layer, and more, instant messaging, presence, all of the areas of technology that I've mentioned. And all this is occurring around a constant pressure that every company has on their operating costs. So we've basically got increasing user demands, increasing expectations, more dynamic operating environments from a company perspective, and less money to do more with. And so it's quite a challenge. I mean, I certainly think, the companies that we work with across the world are constantly struggling with this increasingly complex environment, increasing demands from the users, and shrinking budgets for the management and optimization of their technology. And you throw into that the additional problem that technology is evolving so quickly now that to keep up from a skill perspective, to be able to manage the technology and to be able to optimize the technology is extremely difficult. So to summarize this slide, which is the background, your environment that you're operating in today from a communications perspective is vastly different to that which you operated in 10 years ago, 5 years ago, maybe even 2 or 3 years ago, but the challenges are the same. And if we summarize the challenges that companies have from a management and optimization perspective, they would fall into 4 areas. The first one being maximizing uptime. Of course, the base responsibility and accountability of a technology team is to make sure that the technology they provide to their users is available 100% of the time. Now, it's very rare that anyone achieves 100%. You hear terms like 5 nines reliability. and various other terms, but the base requirement, the base accountability of management and support teams is to maximize uptime. The second area, which has always been important but is more difficult now, is keeping the technology current. And so if you look historically at voice technology, you might have had a major change in the technology and its capability every 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, and upgrading those technologies used to take what we would call a forklift upgrade. Literally go in, take out what you've got and put a brand new one in. Now, the development of technology means that's not the case anymore, and with major vendors like Cisco or excuse me, Microsoft or Avaya, you will now see pretty significant upgrades to the capability of the technology every 6 to 12 months. And the market is moving very quickly. And so for an organization to keep their technology current is obviously more complex today than it used to be. The third challenge is to deliver an exceptional user experience. And of course this is key to IT departments in every company, because generally speaking, the experience that your users get of you is when they have a problem. And it's always, you know, it's the downside of being in IT within a corporate environment, is the fact that you do all these wonderful things from a solution perspective, from a tools perspective, you deliver them more, but ultimately they judge you based on their experience when you have a problem. And so if you're not delivering an amazing experience in the way that you manage their problems and the way that you fix them, the perception of IT is impacted very significantly. And you know, one could argue it's the perception impact is far more significant than it should be, but it is a reality of corporate life. Excuse me. And then the fourth one, which I mentioned earlier, is controlling costs. So, you know, with all of these very significant challenges based on the background that I talked about, and the fact that the challenges are the same, we think that, you know, there's scope for companies to look quite closely at how they are managing and how they are optimizing the technology that they have invested in. Now, we as a company specialize in Cisco's technology. So at the core of all of our solutions, we have Cisco's UC and contact center technology, and generally underpinned by their networking technology. But frankly, that doesn't really matter when you look at the core components of managing and optimizing a technology environment. And what I've tried to do here, what we've tried to do here, is bring together a list of the key components of delivering the things that will allow you to deliver against these four challenges that you have each and every day. The first one is an exceptional end-user help desk. And what we mean by this is the help desk that your end users come into contact with when they have a problem. So this is not a technical support desk. This is, you know, I'm out on the road, my, I don't know, my Java interface on my iPad is not doing what it's meant to be doing. Who do I contact and how do I contact them, and what experience do I get when I contact them? And of course, generally speaking, large organizations have quite big internal teams managing this sort of tier one end user requirements from a help desk and a full perspective, but it is very important, and so we put that at the top of the list because sometimes it doesn't get the attention that it deserves. The advent of bring your own device and user choice in their end user device also elevates the importance of the end user help desk. And what we're seeing now is a move from you know, either online end user help desks or telephone-based end-user help desks to use a term that Apple have institutionalized, this sort of genius bar concept. And so putting into their corporate environments, certainly the larger locations, putting in genius bars where people can actually come up to a set of technical support people and run through the problems they're having or the things that they want to set up, and really try and help them get the most that they can out of their applications on their own chosen device. And so we think this is a big area that needs focus. The way that it has been done historically is not necessarily going to satisfy the bring your own device environment, and people need to look much more closely at it. The second is the technical support desk. Obviously this goes without saying that if you're responsible for fixing issues and fixing faults, you've got to have an amazing technical support desk. And that technical support desk, whether it is provided by you internally or whether it is provided by a third party, has to have the depth of capability and the skills around each of the applications that you are delivering to your users, so that they can fix issues quickly and so that they can ensure that the downtime of the technology you're operating is as low as possible. The third area is proactive monitoring, and whilst this is very common in networking technology, it is not as common in UC and contact center technology, but we see it as an essential tool to allow companies to deliver the maximum uptime possible. And so proactive monitoring is exactly what it says it is, which is a system which is constantly looking at the performance of your system and making decisions on whether it's running as it should be, or if it isn't running as it should be, automatically creating a fault event, so that either you, if you're doing the internal, the support of the technology yourselves, or your third party can deal with the issue even before the general population of the organization knows that there is an issue. And so an effective proactive monitoring tool can make a huge difference to the way in which you are perceived by your users. The fourth area is vendor escalation, which vendor escalation, to be clear what that is that the vendor or the manufacturer obviously makes the technology that you are using. And now you either work with a partner like Touchbase, or you do it yourself. But at some stage, you will come across issues which are lab level, they're R&D level issues. And so making sure that within your management and optimization plan, you have access to the manufacturer's top resource from a lab or R&D perspective is extremely important to ensuring that you're maximizing the uptime of the technology. As is the parts replacement program that you have. If you're a very large organization, we would generally recommend that you provide your own parts replacement service, because from a fiscal perspective, if you're large, it tends to make more sense from a financial point of view. But regardless, you've got to have a tight and accountable way of delivering parts to your various locations, so that you can ensure that the uptime of the technology is maximized. So those 5 areas are pretty straightforward. I would be surprised if anyone on this call has not looked at each of them and is not considering how to improve each of them. I think if we look at our entire client base and the experience that we've had, the key areas that need probably the most review is the end user help desk in the context of bring your own device. So looking at how you can improve your end user experience with your users using any of their devices that they want to. the proactive monitoring, certainly from a UC and contact center perspective, we do not see it as commonly as you would expect. I think it should be very high on the agenda because it reduces the pain on the users from downtime, but it also reduces the amount of time you need to spend constantly watching your systems. And the third one is the vendor escalation. And of course, most companies, certainly Cisco clients, have SmartNet or some equivalent product which allows them to escalate lab level and R&D level issues to Cisco. And the only thing, for us to focus on that is probably not massively valuable. The only thing that we would urge the organizations that we engage with to do is make sure that there is not duplication in what you're paying for with the manufacturer escalation and what you're paying for either with your internal resource capability or your third-party company like Touchbase capability. Just to be clear that there isn't overlap in the accountability and skills across those three parties, internal, manufacturer, and partner. And then the other ones, which I think are fundamental, certainly from our perspective, in delivering value and consistency to the clients we work with, are providing one point of accountability. Where possible, you need to try and wrap up the technology that is being managed under as few third parties as possible. The reason for that is obvious, that the more parties you have managing your environment, the more chance there is for finger pointing. And as the technology has evolved from being proprietary, sort of single box, single manufacturer, one point of accountability, to this much more distributed, broader set of technologies from multiple vendors, and much more dependence on the transport layer, the networking layer, the idea of who is accountable for what has become much more important. And so when you look at networking, call processing, video processing, IM, presence, conferencing, ACD, IVR, the list goes on and on and on. The fewer points of accountability that you can create within your management and optimization plan, the more successful your management of that technology will be. Now, who does the management of the technology is pretty much irrelevant as long as you've reduced the points of accountability. The classic in voice would be looking at how you manage a fault on a user fault with, let's say, making a telephone call, and identifying whether that issue is with the carrier, with the network operator, or whether it is with your own network and your own technology. That single issue could eat up hours of your time and is extremely ineffective if you're trying to fix the problem. Whereas if you have one point of accountability for that overall environment, you would naturally reduce the time it takes to manage it and eradicate the "it's not my problem, it's their problem," which is really one of the biggest issues in managing technology, as you will all know, as you're involved in it. The next area which we think is important is value reviews, looking constantly, and again, depending on how large you are, depending on what the volume of activity from a management perspective goes on, you need to make sure that you have regular value reviews, looking at exactly what has gone wrong when, how those issues were managed, how the users were impacted, what the response and the satisfaction of the users are. And a good third party will drive those value reviews for you, so that they are sitting in front of you justifying their existence on a monthly or a quarterly basis in the form of a well-structured and detailed review of all of the things that have gone on from a management perspective. The next area is optimized briefings. I mentioned earlier the fact that the technology is moving very quickly. The capability of the technology is moving very quickly, and therefore to have defined points in time where you as a technology team sit down with your third-party provider and look at the development of the technology and understand, you know, the new features available or the new management capabilities available is fundamentally important, and in our experience doesn't get the attention and doesn't get the time that really it should, because you've spent millions of dollars, generally speaking, on infrastructure, on applications to deliver something to the business. And unless you keep an eye on how that technology is developing and how you can keep aligning it to the business and adding more value to the business, you will fall behind in the way that you apply it. That ties in with the next one, which is the client engagement manager, and looking at having someone either internally, if you're doing it yourselves, or certainly with your third party, who can manage these things for you. Make sure that you're getting the value reviews that you are entitled to. Make sure that you're getting the optimized briefings that you're entitled to and that you should be demanding, and making sure that any major issues that you come across are being escalated correctly and managed correctly, so that you hit your objectives. You know, this concept of maximizing your uptime, delivering a great user experience to your end users, making sure that the technology is current, and keeping your costs as low as possible. And all of this stuff should be underpinned by a tight methodology. And we use ITIL, which is, most of you will be familiar with. It's an industry-wide standard which really forces companies, forces partners, forces anyone involved in the management and optimization of technology to work to an established set of principles, processes, and methods which are drawn from best practice across, you know, many thousands of companies across the world, to make sure that on a regular basis you're not just doing the firefighting and the things that you need to do when someone tells you they need to be done, but also the more strategic and value-adding activities which, frankly, if they are not scheduled and if they're not managed, don't get done because other things take your time. So I apologize for the fact this is a sort of bit of a one-way discussion, and it's a long list of things that I'm going through, but these would be the key components that we would propose to anyone that wants us to help with the management and optimization of their technology, and to really get under the skin of each one from a requirements perspective and define exactly what it is you want to be delivering to either your users or to yourselves from a technology team perspective, to make sure that the objectives of maximum uptime, happy end users, well-aligned technology, and efficiency from a cost perspective are met on a constant basis. And this is not something we don't think that you should do every 5 years. It is definitely an annual activity, if not quarterly, depending on the speed at which your business is developing. So I also asked, you know, we operate 3 network operations centers, one in Denver, one in London, and one in Sydney, which is how we provide our end user and technical support desks for our clients. And so I just asked the engineers and the technical people within those areas, what are the top things that you see cause issues for clients in meeting the objectives, the 4 objectives? And so, you know, obviously I've talked about high-level areas which have a lot of substance behind them, need a lot of looking at, and all of these additional focus areas fall into one or more of these areas. But these are the top things that they came up with. The first is tight service level agreements. So making sure that whoever is doing the management and optimization of your technology has really clean and clear SLAs against what the points of accountability that they have. The second is, if you are able to, always run a 24/7, 365 capability. Now, even if you're running on one time zone, this is important because obviously if issues occur at night, you don't want to come into work in the morning to a whole barrage of problems which could have been fixed before the general user community got into work. And so whilst 24/7, 365 is often associated with global organizations or companies running more than one time zone, we advocate quite strongly that companies view it as a standard operating procedure for management of technology, because it makes sense. You know, when the fault occurs, you want to manage it, you want to get it fixed as quickly as you can, and even better if you can do it out of hours. Now, if you're global, that's quite difficult because there's no such thing as out of hours, but certainly we think that should be high on the agenda when you're scoping your management, your technology management plan. The next is keeping your skills current. This is probably the biggest issue for companies that try to do a lot of the management themselves. And there's nothing wrong with trying to do it yourself. It's a way of doing it. But a key issue is keeping the skills current. With the level of technology development in UC, in contact center, I mean, a company like Touchbase, which is all we do all day, is this. It is still a challenge, and one which we're very focused on, and one which we invest significantly in, to keep people's skills at the level that you need them to be at to deliver the service that you need to deliver to your end users. So current skills should be really high on the agenda in terms of your planning, making sure that whether you do it yourselves or someone else is doing it for you, that they give you the commitments to having the right resource, dealing with the right issue at the right time to ensure that it gets fixed, and ensure that the people dealing with it understand the technology that they're dealing with. The fourth one was the knowledge database, and it's surprising the number of companies that when we start to work with them, who are not institutionalizing the knowledge that they build every day through dealing with issues and faults in their systems. And of course, this is one of those things that people say, well, I mean, it's a very logical thing to say that you should record the issues you've had so that if you have them again, you can fix them more quickly. But it's still amazing to see the number of companies that have not, either themselves or through their third party, not institutionalized this. And it can save a massive amount of time and money if you have a growing database of knowledge from the issues that you've dealt with in the past. The next is an upgrade diary, what we would call an upgrade diary, which is exactly what it says, and that is basically scheduling ahead of time the upgrades of your systems. And this, again, is well, why are you telling me that? That's very straightforward. But again, we constantly find that clients who have invested in the initial technology have also invested in upgrade protection with the manufacturer, but are not leveraging it because the day-to-day stuff takes them away from these housekeeping items. And if it's not diarized and if it's not scheduled, we find that the upgrades slip, and companies are both not current, so from a patch perspective and a feature perspective, are not as either secure or feature-rich as they could be, but also they are not leveraging the fact that they've already paid for this new upgrade, this new software. And so we would, any clients that we work with, we would be pretty pretty clear on the fact that we should put in place an upgrade diary that just makes sure that at least major upgrades are done as quickly as possible following their release, and that the systems that you are using are fully up to date. The next is testing failover and redundancy. Companies don't do that enough, and obviously it's key, and so testing it at least every 6 months we think is fundamental in your management plan. Auditing your configuration is key. I'm starting to rush because I realize I'm rambling on a bit. I've used up a lot of the time, but system configuration audits are key. Obviously technology changes over time in increments. Someone wants this done, someone wants that done, and so just on a quarterly or 6 monthly basis, taking a look at your configuration is extremely important and very valuable to just make sure that you're up to date and aware of what the system looks like, which ties in with the next point, and that is change management, ensuring that your change management process is tight. Certainly now that there is so much interdependence between technologies, your change management process across your desktop team, your voice team, your video team, and the various teams who are responsible for delivering this single experience to the user is essential. As you all know, if someone changes something, I don't know, in the Exchange server, it has a knock-on effect into all of your other communications applications, and so the change management process is becoming more and more important. And then just the last 2 or 3 or 4 are really around making sure that you have a patch management process in place, that your incident reporting is tight, that your escalation process is tight, that you have centralized and up-to-date documentation. This, when I got the response from our engineering team, had a big red line under it. This, centralized and up-to-date documentation was the #1 cause. Lack of it is the #1 cause of wasted time in fixing issues. And so having an institutionalized process around documentation, keeping it up to date, keeping it centralized and accessible to all parties who are interested is key. And just constant and honest communication around the issues, making sure everyone's working together as a team is pretty straightforward. And then just making sure that you're looking at the root cause of problems and making sure that you document them after they've occurred, so that fix the issue now and do it urgently, but then everyone go back to the issue to identify why it occurred and make sure that that is documented and make sure that that is stored in your knowledge base. So I apologize because I haven't done this justice, and I think this is probably very useful for you. Obviously, we'd be very happy to give you any more information, any more insight that you would like on any of these areas. But this came from the people who are dealing with, our clients, whether they're small or large clients, whether they're national or global on a day-to-day basis, as the key challenges in us delivering a fantastic experience to our clients and obviously helping them deliver fantastic experience to their clients. So I've got a couple of minutes left. I just want to touch quickly on the options available to you to manage your technology. They are very simple. You can either do it yourself, you can either have someone else do it for you, or you can do a bit of both. Now, having done this for 20 years, we would always like to see companies doing the third option. Now, we have a vested interest in that, of course, because we want to work with companies, we want to help them manage their technology, we want to help them optimize it. But if you look at the key challenges, those 4 key challenges, the best way to deliver against them is to have an exceptional internal team that is focused on the strategic development of technology, that is focused on the, obviously the high impact initiatives that the company requires to develop itself from a technology perspective. And then they work with an exceptional third party to do the day-to-day stuff, what we would call the grunt work. And I'm not diminishing its importance, but a lot of it is repetitive. A lot of it is about scheduling, is about disciplined process management. And to have an organization working hand in hand with an internal technology team to deliver a bunch of shared objectives against a very tight set of SLAs, we think allows companies to deliver a well-managed technology environment, a happy user community, make sure that their technology is aligned to the business continuously, and is much more cost-effective. Because, of course, working with a third party where you're sharing skills with other clients of that third party mean that you have the best talent at the best time for the specific situation. And so you can do it yourself, which if you're a larger company is perfectly feasible. You can have someone else do it for you, which we would term the sort of full outsource model. And we've yet to see that succeed brilliantly, frankly. And we think that is because it's generally financially driven and it delivers great financial benefit at the front end, but it doesn't provide that vital joint ownership over the long term, because you've essentially outsourced everything to someone else. Whereas the third option, which is where you outsource some bits, you keep some bits, keeps everyone in the game from an objectives perspective, and it creates a much more of a joint approach when it comes to delivering to the end users. So just finalizing and finishing up on how we think you should get it right, this is what we would recommend, this is what we would do from a client perspective when we get engaged. The very first thing is to audit your current situation. So look at where you are today from a management and optimization perspective and map it out against best practice. Some of the things that are underneath these core components and the best practices behind them, map them out and work out exactly where you are today against them. Construct a gap analysis which will lead to a requirement schedule when you say this is where we are today, this is the best practice, where are the gaps that exist, and then look at the delivery options. And the delivery options are very much will very much be focused on how you want to do it, whether you want to do it all yourselves, whether you want someone else to do it all, or whether you want to do a bit of both. You can then look at the delivery options. But don't look at the delivery options before you've created the gap analysis and the requirements, because they shouldn't change regardless of how you deliver it. And then go on to execute that through either improving your internal resource if you're going to do it all yourselves, or finding the right partner to do it with, or a bit of both if you are going to be doing that sort of hybrid model. And then the most important thing, once you've done all of that, is to review it every quarter. And that's where the value review is key. If you've set out your requirements and you've been very clear on those requirements in the construction of your management and optimized plan, then it should be a simple exercise every quarter with your client engagement manager to review how you're doing against those requirements, and to make tweaks and improvements against those requirements every quarter. Don't leave it 6 months, don't leave it a year when it's coming up for renewal. It should be an ongoing process. And if you're a large organization with multiple operations across the world, you might want to do that even every month. And certainly for our largest clients, we do that every month. So if you get it right, and I feel guilty not having done justice to all of the various parts of this that I've mentioned today. But if you get it right, you will maximize the uptime of your technology. You will make sure that your technology is aligned. You will have a bunch of ecstatic users, which is the most difficult thing to deliver in management and optimization, because you're generally dealing with problems. And you will be much more cost effective. On average, companies that we engage from a management and optimized perspective save around 30% of their total loaded cost for management and optimization when they approach it in the way that we talked about today. And that, you know, if you're spending, I mean, even if you're spending $100,000 a year on this, that's 30,000. If you're spending $1 million a year, that's 300,000. And if you're spending 10 million a year, it's 3 million. And so 30% is a big gain for companies who are currently under significant pressure from a cost perspective. So just to summarize, and I'm rushing, but management and optimization is at least as important as the technology you've chosen to invest in. So all of this effort that goes into the design, the requirements, the planning, the execution, is important, of course, because you want the right technology. But management and optimization is at least as important. I personally think it's more important. Technology is pretty homogeneous now. It all does pretty much the same thing. The way in which you manage it and develop it is how you squeeze the value out of it. You've got to treat it as a strategic and operational imperative. Support of technology is not just a facilities function. It is how you get the best out of the technology you've invested in, and the benefits are massive. And we would obviously love to help you. I mentioned at the start that if you are interested in any of the areas I've talked about, any of the, just getting deeper into any of the specific components, or just want us to take a look at how you're doing it today and make some recommendations for you, just let us know. I mean, we're always keen to build our client base. We're always keen to work with more clients. But we also have a huge amount of knowledge and capability in this area, and we can help you. So I think with that, I'll just say thank you very much for listening to me. I'm sorry it was rushed, a lot of content, and I hope we can maybe get a bit more detailed dive with you on a one-to-one basis around this very, very important area of technology. So I would just ask you, I know we've run out of time, if you have any questions, raise them now. Otherwise, we'll close up and hopefully discuss things with you on a one-to-one basis. Okay, so no questions, which either means I was desperately dull or people have gone to do other things because I run out of time. But don't hesitate to contact us. I think you've got all our details if you want us to do more work with you. And thank you very much for taking the time. I know personally I get invited to a lot of these things, and it takes a lot to take the time out. So thank you very much for listening, and hope to speak to you again. Thank you.
Yesterday